They say temptation doesn't always knock loudly. Sometimes, it just lingers quietly right there beside you. In the elevator, in the break room, across the meeting table, smiling, laughing, listening, when no one else does. I never thought my story would end up like this. I didn't wake up one day and decide to cross a line. There wasn't a plan. There wasn't even a moment of rebellion. But loneliness has a way of making ordinary things feel extraordinary. And it sneaks up on you. Slowly, until one day, you're staring at the people you see every day, and wondering if maybe, just maybe, they see you too. It's been nearly a year since that night. The night I let them in. Not just into my house, but into the hollow spaces I'd been trying so hard to fill with silence and smiles. And I know how that sounds. Trust me, I do. You're probably already forming opinions, thinking I'm reckless, or weak, or worse. But here's the thing, this isn't a story about lust, or scandal, or some wild, thrilling escape. This is a story about emptiness, and how easily you can fall into someone else's orbit when your own world has grown too quiet. It's about the little things. Like when Aiden remembered how I take my coffee. When Marcus noticed my chipped nail polish and asked if I was okay. When Reese stayed behind after a long meeting just to help me shut down my laptop. Things my husband stopped noticing a long time ago. You ever felt invisible in your own home? Like your presence is more of a habit than a heartbeat. When Daniel stopped sleeping in our room, he said it was just because of his back. But we both knew that wasn't the truth. He stopped kissing me goodnight. Stopped asking about my day. Stopped seeing me. So when the guys from work started coming around more often, it didn't feel dangerous. It felt nice. Like I existed again. Like someone still thought I was interesting. Beautiful, even. But here's the part I'm still trying to make sense of. I didn't feel like I was doing anything wrong. Not at first. Not when I invited them over for dinner. Not when we laughed until midnight. Not even when the conversations got personal. It was just dinner. Just drinks. Just friends. Until it wasn't. Until Aiden leaned a little too close. Until Reese started showing up when he wasn't supposed to. Until Marcus joked about what it would be like if the three of them shared me. We all laughed. But something in me fluttered. And something in them changed. It's strange how one night, one decision, can split your life in two. Before and after. And you don't realize you've crossed the line until you look back and see just how far you've walked. So, if you've ever felt like you were fading, if you've ever made a choice you can't quite explain, not even to yourself, then stay with me. Because what happened that night wasn't just about who walked through my door. It was about what they stepped into. And what part of me never came back out. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold to hear the stories we whisper in the dark. The ones we're too afraid to tell out loud. Because sometimes healing begins when the truth is finally spoken. I'm 38. Married for 11 years. Team lead at a firm that praises deliverables more than people. Most days, I wear the right smile. Say the right things. Do the right work. And then I go home. To a man who barely looks up from his screen when I walk in. Daniel used to be different. He used to hold me. Ask about my day. Care. Now, he says he's just tired. That the stress is piling up. That his back hurts. That the guest room is more comfortable. But we both know, it's not just his back that's keeping us apart. We haven't been intimate in over 6 months. And I stopped counting after that. Breakfast is quiet. Dinner is even quieter. Sometimes, I speak just to hear my own voice. Just to remind myself I'm still here. And then there's work. The place I started dreading until they came along. Aiden, Reese, Marcus. They're all on my team. All younger. All different in their own ways. But together, somehow, they made the office feel less cold. Aiden is smooth. Too smooth. Maybe? He always knew just what to say. He once leaned in, half smiling, and said, "You know, you're dangerously beautiful when you're focused." I laughed it off, but I remembered it. Reese is the quiet one. Soft-spoken, always watching. He'd send articles he thought I'd like. Notice things like a change in my earrings or the shade of my lipstick. He never made a move. He didn't have to. Marcus was the wild one. Always joking, pushing boundaries with humor. He'd make comments that walked the edge, and I'd pretend to scold him, even as I smiled. They made the long hours easier. Made me feel alive. The week the big project wrapped, I was exhausted. Mentally, emotionally, everything. So I invited them over. Just the three of them. As a thank you. Nothing more. It was a rainy Friday night. Daniel had texted earlier. He'd be working late again. I didn't bother asking when he'd be back. I cleaned up the living room. Picked up a bottle of wine. Set out snacks I barely touched. When they arrived, it felt light. Easy. Laughter filled corners of the house that had been quiet for too long. We talked about work, life, regrets. And then, the tone shifted. Not all at once. Just in the way Aiden looked at me when I laughed. The way Reese offered to help clean up, but didn't really move from the couch. The way Marcus leaned closer, speaking softer, as if our conversation was separate from the others. I thought it would just be dinner. A small gesture of appreciation. A casual evening with colleagues. But something else crept into the room. Something warm, and charged, and terribly dangerous. And I didn't stop it. The wine was flowing more than I intended. Not because I was careless, but because, for once, I didn't want to be so careful. Laughter had softened the air. We were no longer colleagues in that moment. Just four people, stuck in the same storm outside, and maybe a different kind of storm inside. That's when Marcus suggested we play a game. Let's do confessions, he grinned, swirling the last of his red wine. Nothing crazy. Just truths. No judgment. I should have stopped it right there. Drawn the line. Reminded them we were adults, professionals. But I didn't, because some part of me wanted to hear what they'd say. Some part of me wanted to be included in something real. Even if it got messy. Marcus went first. He confessed that he once hooked up with a client and spent the next 3 months pretending nothing happened. We all laughed too hard. The kind of laugh that stretches a little too long. Like it's covering something else. Then Aiden leaned forward. His voice low. His eyes locked on mine. And he said, I have a thing for older women. The room went still for just a second too long. Not just older, he added, but the kind who look like they've loved hard and been let down harder. I didn't know what to say. So I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I felt like crying. Then it was Reese's turn. He didn't say anything at first. Just looked at me. Too long. Too quiet. And in that stillness, I felt something shift. Something unspoken, and yet loud in my chest. It was subtle. No one touched me. No one said anything too bold. But their eyes told a different story. And for the first time in years, I felt seen. Not professionally. Not out of obligation. But as a woman. A person. A presence in the room. The kind of attention that warms you. And terrifies you at the same time. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Working late. Might crash at the office. No good night. No question about how my evening was going. Just a line. And with that one message, he handed me the silence I'd been sitting in for months. I didn't reply. I didn't ask if he was okay. I didn't even feel surprised. I just looked around the room. At the wine glasses. The flickering candles. The way Marcus was staring at my legs. The way Aiden's thumb tapped slowly on his knee. The way Reese sat back, still watching me, like he already knew what I was thinking. I could have sent them home. I should have. But I didn't. I just stood up, took the empty wine bottle to the kitchen, and left the door wide open behind me. And one by one, they followed. I couldn't stop thinking about that night. Not in the way you might think. Not because of what happened, but because of everything that almost did. I kept replaying the moments. The glances, the pauses in conversation, the closeness that wasn't quite inappropriate, but wasn't innocent either. I wasn't supposed to feel excited. Not by the way Aiden's hand brushed mine when I passed him the corkscrew. Not by how Marcus leaned in when he spoke, his voice low, like we had our own little secret. Not by the way Reese lingered behind, offering to dry the dishes while the others went back to the living room. We stood side by side, not talking. The hum of the dishwasher. His quiet breath. The tension thick enough to taste. And yet, no one touched me. No one kissed me. No lines were crossed. But I felt it in every cell of my body, and I hated how much I wanted to feel it again. I asked myself why. Why this mattered. Why it moved me. Was I just lonely? Was I bored? Had I gone so long without being noticed that even the smallest gesture felt like something sacred? Daniel didn't say anything when I came to bed that night. Didn't ask about the evening. Didn't ask if I missed him. He didn't notice that I wore the perfume he used to love. Didn't notice the dress I bought just for that night. But Aiden noticed. He said it hugged me in all the right ways. And I pretended not to blush. But I did. I kept telling myself nothing happened. And it didn't. Not technically. But the thoughts I had. The way I let them linger. That wasn't nothing. I wasn't cheating. Not yet. But I wasn't innocent either. And I knew that. I started looking forward to seeing them at work. Started dressing with a little more intention. Started laughing a little louder when they were around. I watched Daniel eat his breakfast like always. Head down. Phone in hand. He didn't even glance at me. But at work. Aiden noticed when I changed my earrings. Reese brought me coffee with exactly 2 sugars and almond milk without asking. Marcus left a sticky note on my desk that said, "Still thinking about Friday. We should do it again." I kept it, tucked inside my planner, like a secret I wasn't ready to throw away. The following Monday, they started dropping by more often. Excuses mostly. Aiden said he left his flash drive at my place. Reese said he had questions about the client meeting. Marcus just showed up and said, "Thought you could use a laugh." And each time, I opened the door. Sometimes, Daniel was home. Sometimes he wasn't. He never asked who they were. He never looked long enough to care. That hurt more than anything. I started to wonder if he'd even notice if I disappeared. If I slowly faded out of his life, would he even miss me? But those 3? They saw me. And maybe that's all it takes. To feel a little dangerous. A little desired. And to let something you thought was impossible start to feel inevitable. It started happening more often. Little drop-ins that turned into hours. Team check-ins, they called it. But there were no notebooks. No laptops. No agendas. Just takeout containers on the coffee table. Movie nights that started at 8 and ended past midnight. And conversations that drifted from work to music to things that felt too personal, too private, but we shared anyway. They never came all at once after that first dinner. It was always 1, maybe 2, but never all 3, not until later. One night, it was just Aiden. He texted around 7, said he had a new wine he wanted me to try. I told myself it was harmless. It was just wine. It was just Aiden. But something about the way he sat on the couch that night, the way he watched me as I tucked my legs under, how his eyes lingered on my knees, how his voice dropped when he asked how I really was, it pulled something loose in me. We talked too long. About marriage. About regrets. About dreams we said out loud, knowing we'd never chase them. At one point, I reached to pour more wine, and my shoulder brushed against his. It stayed there too long. Neither of us moved. I leaned in when I left. He didn't pull back. But nothing happened. Not that night. I stood up first. Created space. Tried to regain control of the room, of myself. That's when Reese walked in. No knock. Just the door opening. I turned, startled, half guilty, though I hadn't done anything wrong. And yet, Reese didn't look surprised. He looked at Aiden, then at me, and nodded, almost like it confirmed something he already knew. I realized then. They'd spoken about it. About me. About the way I'd started looking at them. The way they'd started orbiting closer. Marcus came by the next day. He didn't even pretend to have a reason. He dropped onto the couch, tossed a pillow at Aiden, who was already there, and said, "All right, we gotta figure this out. We can't keep fighting over her." They all laughed. And so did I. But in that laughter, I felt the weight behind the joke. It wasn't just a fantasy anymore. It was circling, brewing. There were glances now that didn't pretend to be innocent. Moments of silence that said too much. Shoulders brushing mine in the hallway at work. Fingers touching mine when handing over a pen. Eyes that stayed too long when no one was looking. And still, I let it happen. I let it all happen. I told myself it was just harmless fun. That it gave me something to look forward to. That it filled a space Daniel no longer even noticed was empty. But the truth? I was unraveling. Quietly. Willingly. Then came the night all three showed up together again. No texts. No warning. Just a knock on the door. Three of them standing there, casual smiles on their faces. Like they'd done it 100 times. And this time, I didn't resist. That night, something in the air was different before the door even closed behind them. The way they looked at me, no more masks. No more pretending this was just another evening. I could feel my heart pounding before we even said a word. We didn't bother turning on the TV. No one asked about work. We sat close, too close on the couch, knees touching, shoulders brushing. Wine glasses passed from hand to hand, but no one was drinking for the taste. We talked about relationships. The lies we tell ourselves to keep going. The things we wish we could say out loud but swallow instead. Marcus leaned in first, his knee pressing against mine. He looked right at me, not grinning this time, just open, honest, searching. Aiden's hand found mine, fingers tracing absent circles on my skin. His touch was careful, almost reverent. It felt like electricity, like the beginning of something I'd been craving but never let myself ask for. Reese, quiet as always, just looked at me. And then he whispered, barely above a breath, "Are you sure?" And in that moment, I was. Not because I wanted to betray Daniel. Not because I was angry or reckless or desperate, but because for the first time in years, I wanted to feel chosen. Desired. Like I was more than an afterthought, more than someone's obligation or roommate or burden. I didn't think about consequences. Or guilt. Or what tomorrow would look like. I only thought about right then. The warmth of hands that wanted me, the eyes that saw me, the laughter that felt like safety and risk all at once. The night unfolded in a way I never could have imagined. It wasn't about bodies. It was about need, the quiet, aching need to be seen, to be touched, to be understood. There were moments when it felt like I was outside myself, watching another version of me take risks, say yes to things I'd only let myself dream about in the quietest, loneliest hours. But I wasn't numb. I felt everything, the heat in the room, the tangle of emotions, the terrible, beautiful closeness. It was intimate, not vulgar or wild, but gentle, slow, and devastatingly real. There were words whispered I can barely remember now. Fingers interlaced. Foreheads touching in the dark. A feeling of being known, truly known, even if only for a single night. And when it was over, there was a silence that wasn't empty. A kind of peace and sadness all tangled together. I fell asleep on the couch, blanket around my shoulders, surrounded by echoes of laughter and secrets that would never be spoken out loud. When I woke up the next morning, they were gone. But something inside me had changed forever. The next few days, I moved through them like I was made of glass. Still, cracked in places I couldn't see, but felt with every breath. At work, I avoided them. Took the long way to the break room. Scheduled fake meetings just to stay away. Lingered in bathroom stalls until I knew the coast was clear. But they acted normal. Too normal. Aiden still joked during morning briefings. Marcus still sent ridiculous memes to the group chat. Reese still sat in his usual spot, quiet, measured, unreadable. No one looked guilty. No one slipped up. And maybe that should have comforted me. But instead, it made me paranoid. Did they talk about it after? Did they laugh? Did they regret it? Did they tell someone? Was I a story now? Every glance felt like it meant something. Every silence screamed. I kept my head down, my heart racing in meetings, my hands trembling when one of them spoke to me too casually. Then Daniel, who hadn't noticed me in months, looked up from his laptop one night and said, "You seem lighter." Did something change? I froze, smiled, shrugged. He started coming home earlier after that. Started sitting with me during dinner again. Started asking if I wanted to watch something together before bed. But it was too late. Not because of what I'd done, but because of everything I'd stopped feeling for him long before that night. And maybe now he sensed it. The shift. The missing piece. I kept wondering if they could sense it too. If every word I spoke came with a hidden question mark. If every smile I force-cracked just a little at the edges. Then one day, I stepped into the elevator. And there was Reese. Just him. He didn't say a word. Didn't look away. Just stared. Straight through me. Not angry. Not cold. Just distant. Like whatever had passed between us was gone. Like it never happened. Like I was just a woman in the wrong place, at the wrong time, sharing a quiet box of silence with a stranger. And I knew right then, whatever it was, it ended that night. But the pieces of me they touched, they're still there. Somewhere beneath the surface. Still humming. Still echoing. Still haunting. I kept asking myself, why? Why did I let it happen? Why didn't I stop it? I wanted to blame the wine. Say I wasn't thinking clearly. That maybe I got caught up in the moment, in the warmth, the attention, the way their eyes made me feel like I mattered again. I wanted to blame Daniel. For the nights he turned his back on me. For the months he made me feel like a burden instead of a partner. For forgetting who I was, even when I was standing right in front of him. I wanted to blame them. Aiden's charm. Reese's intensity. Marcus's playfulness that always came with a little bit of fire. But the truth? The truth is simple. I opened the door. I said yes. And I let them in. It didn't happen to me. I chose it. Every part of it. Not out of lust. Not out of revenge. But out of emptiness. I didn't cheat just with my body. I cheated with my loneliness. With the way I ached to be noticed. With the way I stayed quiet when I should have walked away. I cheated with my silence. Every time I smiled and pretended I was fine. Every time I held back tears over dinner. Every time I brushed off my own needs because his were louder. What does that make me? A bad wife? A desperate woman? A cautionary tale? I used to judge women like me. I used to think she should have just left. She should have known better. She must not love her husband. But now I see them differently. Because I am her. And I know now, it's not always about not loving your partner. Sometimes it's about losing pieces of yourself so quietly, so slowly, that by the time you realize what's missing, you're already standing in someone else's arms, trying to remember what it felt like to be whole. I wish I could say I don't think about it anymore. But I do. Not because I want to go back, but because I can't forget the way it felt to be wanted again. To be seen. Even if it was only for a moment. Even if it cost me something I can never quite get back. Have you ever made a choice, not because you wanted to, but because you didn't know how to say no? Because the silence around you had grown so loud, you'd do anything to feel something again? I keep asking myself, was I wrong for letting that moment happen? Or was I just human? Human in the way that aches to be seen, to be heard, to be touched without judgment, to be wanted without apology. They didn't force me. I wasn't tricked. I knew exactly what I was doing, and I did it anyway, because something inside me was starving. And that night, I stopped pretending otherwise. So I'm asking you, Not for permission, not for forgiveness, but for honesty. Tell me in the comments, was this betrayal? Or was it just a cry for connection in the wrong place, at the wrong time, with the wrong people? Because sometimes it's not about the act. It's about the why behind it. And if stories like this stir something in you, if they echo in places you've been too afraid to speak of, like this video. And subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We unravel the human heart. Some doors, once opened, can never truly be shut again. Some touches don't fade. They linger. In the silence between moments. In the corners of memories you can't erase. In the questions you ask yourself at night when no one's watching. I don't regret the night, but I regret what it revealed about me. About how far I'd drifted from myself. About how much of me I'd buried to keep everything looking perfect on the outside. In the end, it wasn't the three of them who changed me. It was the mirror they held up to a woman I didn't recognize. A woman who forgot what it meant to feel alive. To feel desired. To feel like she mattered. And maybe that's the real story here. Not the night itself, but the version of me that stood at the door and let them in, not because she was reckless, but because she was tired of being forgotten. So be careful who you let in. Because sometimes the hardest part isn't letting go of the moment. It's forgiving the version of yourself that needed it so badly. You said yes, even when you knew it would break something you might never get back.